and we will begin with prayer. Okay? Let's see what the Lord will do for us tonight. Loving Father, we thank you. What a world, what a change in our world is happening in recent weeks, but we are excited that we still have freedom. We need to keep in mind these harsh measures. We'd be praying for these Freedom Convoy in Canada, that they're really coming down hard on them. But we know that these are just the beginning signs of what we know is going to be spreading worldwide against your people one day soon. We thank you for the freedoms we still have. Bless us tonight as we get back on the saddle of chapter 17. Give us wisdom and counsel and understanding as we look at the principles involving these beasts of 13 and 12 and 13 and 17. And may we also remember there's the testimony of Jesus involved in these chapters as well. So bless us to this end. May holy angels be here. Thank you for your cleansing blood in Jesus' name. Amen. Lesson 45. The beast comparisons. Let us keep in mind one great central truth to be kept ever before the mind in the searching of the scriptures, Christ and him crucified. Every other truth is invested with influence and power corresponding to its relation to this theme. Bring this up for the record. Here we go. You see that? Oh,
Yeah.
So I'll just go over this for a minute, and then we can look at our hard copies. Again, as I have been in this chapter, just read from this statement. The information for this lesson was adapted from Lewis Ware's book, and also the addendum, which I'll get to at the end. But I had not seen this before. This was new to me. So we'll be looking at these relationships here with these beasts. And then we kind of spent some time. I've got the questions based on these paragraphs, so we'll go over that. And then back to chapter 12, and then a couple more questions here at the end. And in conclusion, for the record, so people who will watch this in the future, they will know what we're talking about. And the lesson will be up at the website as well. The Lord has seen it necessary to make a distinction of the beasts mentioned in these chapters 12, 13, and 17. He has done this for the discerning Bible student who is seeking truth. In the table below, we will be able to view this distinction, and then throughout this lesson, gather a greater understanding of the subject. Lastly, we will have questions based on what is read. Okay. So here we see, ladies, we've got three beasts. The great red dragon of chapter 12, sea beast, which combines church and state, and from the abyss, the woman sitting on the beast here in chapter 17, a distinction between church and state. And the bottom row, 7 heads, 10 horns. I had not seen this before, and I didn't know the connection. 12, there's crowns upon heads. 13, there's crowns upon horns. 17, no crowns. Oh, that's interesting. The 7 heads and 10 horns, that is. So as we look at this simple table, we can quickly see the differences. The variation on the crowns is due apparently to the emphasis placed upon the time element introduced in the prophecies. Beasts pictured in 12, 13, 17 have characteristics so similar to show that in the Revelator's prophetic picture gallery, these three beasts are designed to illustrate the continuity of Satan's efforts down through the ages to oppose Christ, working to oppose Christ through the various governments upon earth. Crowns upon heads emphasize the fact that it is governments Satan has employed which war against the Lord's people. Okay. I don't know if we need to read this again, unless you want me to, or we can skip right to the questions. What would you like to do? To skip to the questions, ladies?
Yeah.
So, question 1. Why has the Lord made the distinction of these beasts? What do the crowns upon the heads emphasize? Nobody has any answer?
The crowns on the heads of the beasts?
For the number 1,
Yeah, is that number 1? Is that the one you want?
Correct.
I said they emphasizes the power and authority to whoever wears the crown,
The power and authority to do what?
to control everything, to,
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Or different? Or no?
because
It emphasizes to me that it has influenced the government throughout all the ages to persecute God's people from beginning until end.
yeah,
What I was just reading there at the bottom of the prior page and in the top of this page. Correct. That is a correct statement. Okay. So keep that in mind. I know we're kind of moving. Keep in mind also, it was only chapter 12
yeah,
that this concept was introduced. All through the seals and trumpets, nothing was said about beasts. Yeah, the 4 living creatures. King James says beasts, but it's poor translation. They're living creatures. But these governments, these beasts that show up in chapter 12,
mhm.
and again 13, and now 17. Why do you think they show up really the midway point of the book and not earlier? Because if God's people are blowing messages in back in 8 and 9, they're sealed in 6. Why do we have to wait till 12 before we see this final conflict? Well, 13 and 17. Any idea, Dan? Or no? You're muted.
Sorry, I forgot I muted. The only thing I can think of it is a revelation of Jesus Christ. And so it's basically giving us the backdrop and kind of the history up until then in little chunks, and then enlarging them and gives us more information, and enlarging it again gives us even more information.
I think that's a well stated answer. The backdrop, the history of God's people. We all have seen, we spent quite a bit of time on 12. It's the panoramic view, the great controversy.
Yeah.
That goes all the way back to Satan's rebellion in heaven. And it goes all the way to our day. Really, chapter 12, as just a recap, you can take the entire book and put it into 12. It's all in the nut and bolt fashion. Verse 10, 11 is the very crux of the book, referring to the cross. And 11, they overcame him by blood of the Lamb, word of their testimony. And then we have persecution, the last few verses of the chapter, moving to the end of time. But we have the same picture here. So yeah, I think you're correct, Dan. The early chapters, 10, 11 chapters, or up through at least 10, God is setting the backdrop for his people. He spends the bulk of the book, half the book, in essence, trying to prepare his people. The messages, 7 churches, which are still prevalent today. They're sealing, investigative judgment, beginning in 4 and 5. They're sealing. Angel takes time out in 7. John, let me show you he's going to make it through. And then we have the loud cry, 8 and 9. 10 and 11 really are 10 deals with our history. 11 What we see happening worldwide. French Revolution, the concepts regarding French Revolution are worldwide now. But, and then we have 12 and 13 and 14, 17 is final crisis.
But it's also good triumphing over evil. Like you said, it's the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're gonna, when referring to this addendum that I'm gonna hand out, there's a conflict. It's talking about two mysteries: mystery of godliness, mystery of iniquity, and you'll become better versed on it when you read it. But you have two women. They don't speak. They're on display, but they're at war with each other. And we see what this is our lesson. Now we're looking at the apostate woman here, but for God's people to really understand that battle, the game plan, we have to understand what the enemy's up to. All right, so let's go on. It's a good answer, Elena.
Yes.
What to do, or what do the crowns represent? And Dan. Number 2. What reason is given in Revelation 13 for the crowns on the heads?
Are they on the heads or the horns?
Well, if you look back at page 1,
That's
oh,
that one I brought up to you.
yeah,
hon.
you're right.
It's-
I never.
It's
fixed
not,
it.
it's the, it's the
It's
horn.
supposed to be
It's-
horns. I didn't change that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right, on the horns. So what is that reason?
So what do the horns represent? Nations, people, or what? Governments?
All right, Elena, give me Bible. Where
Okay.
we've gone over this, where would you go to find a definition for horns?
Revelation 13, verses 2 and 7. Let's see what I said.
And it also what Daniel 7. because-
Daniel 7.
Yeah.
Remember, Daniel, Revelation go together hand in glove. Daniel 7, I think it's verse 17.
Yeah, you see,
By the way, Elena, could you pull your camera down?
I was looking.
Oh, much better. Okay. Who's got the text? 7, is it 16, hon? Or Dan, whoever has it.
I didn't go yet there.
No, it's not 16. I was,
17?
I forgot to write it.
20.
You have it,
It-
Dan?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
20.
No, it is verse 17.
No. That just says 4 kings. The great beasts are four.
Oh, I see, because you're saying because the horns are that's why it tells that that's what they are. Is that what you're
Right.
wanting that one on 17?
Well, yeah, okay. 4 beasts or 4 kings.
No, and then, like Deanne said, 20, and then the 10 horns that were on the head, which are and the
Yeah.
other horn,
Yeah,
which came up.
you need to bring in 20. But if you go back to 8 also has it.
Yeah, the horns and the little horn.
The horns is power, right?
Yeah, now the other text I was thinking of, you know where that text is? Habakkuk. Turn to, that's one of those little minor prophet books right before Malachi. And Habakkuk, I think it's verse, you know what, let me get my regular Bible out, because I can find it a lot quicker.
Habakkuk, which one?
It's before Jeremiah. Zephaniah. excuse me.
Yeah.
It's verse 4, huh?
3 verse 4,
Yeah.
Habakkuk.
That's 2 verse 4.
3 verse 4. And his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hand. That's referring to Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
wait a minute. Oh, yeah,
And
I'm
there
sorry.
was the
3,
hiding of his
Yeah.
power.
Mhm.
So And as we learned going back further when we were in the sanctuary study years ago, the horns, putting the blood on the horns, that's why we have the hymn.
Okay, so in our version,
Yeah.
verse 4 says, and I did look it up, and it says, his brightness was like the light. He had rays flashing. Flashing should not even be there. That was added. It should be horns
Mhm.
from his hand, and there his power was hidden. So that flashing needs to be crossed out, should be horns there.
Mhm.
Correct.
Because
And of course-
when I read that, I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. So then I went back and I researched it, and it is supposed to be horns.
And with Daniel 7, it's pretty clear we're talking about kingdoms, kings or beasts and horns.
It's like a whole system there.
When we look at Revelation 13, and I think it's verse 2, excuse me, when it
Yeah.
talks about 10, just like we saw here in the page 1, 7 heads, 10 horns. Well, if the little horn plucked up 3, you have 7 nations in Europe left.
Yeah.
They took out, and we heard a sermon that just Sabbath, he went over some detail I had either not heard of or I'd forgotten. But the 2, the Heruli and the Vandals, where we get Vandals from, they were taken out a few years earlier, but in 538, when the papacy came to power, the Ostrogoths surrounded Rome. And what happened, Elena? Did Dr. Andrew mention that Rome did to break the Ostrogoth power? Do you remember?
I think he
I
say
don't know.
something about the water. He let the,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, this was fascinating to me.
remember
They
the
bring
waters?
Was it the
Dam.
aqueduct system?
Yeah, the aqueduct.
What did he do with the water?
Drain it. They cut the access of the water.
So they cut access to the water, and now there's no water for hydration for the
Yes.
people in the city
Mhm.
surrounding Rome, and or the Ostrogoths.
Mhm.
And so as a result, they didn't have any water, and somehow Rome took advantage of Ostrogoths and
Yeah, destroy them
destroyed them
Mhm.
because they had no water.
because I think they are so dehydrated that
Yeah,
they couldn't fight.
they couldn't fight. So, and that happened the very year papacy comes to power.
That's
Okay.
interesting because Babylon, that's how they get defeated, is from the water, the rivers and the waters coming underneath their walls.
So in the literal, you know the principle. First the natural, you know where Paul says that, right? Corinthians
No.
3. Or is it 2? Let's go there so you have the principle. You won't forget this. 1 Corinthians, or is it 15? I always get this mixed up. No,
It's
it
1546.
is 15. 15 what?
1546, 1 Corinthians.
1546. Thank you, dear. Howbeit that was not first spiritual, but that was natural. So God reveals things in Old Testament time in the natural that we understand spiritual truths. So as you brought up rightly, Dan, Babylon, Cyrus, Medo-Persian king, knew they're going to have this feast day. And so 2-3 months earlier, he gets his army out there and they divert the water so that it would be at its lowest point
Yeah.
the night of the feast. And this is back up the river so many miles. So by the time he gets there, his army just marches right in. So we haven't gotten there. We're going to get there probably in April. Revelation 16, the same thing happens at the beginning of the 6th plague. We won't go there now, but The rivers of Euphrates are dried, just like anciently, but now it's spiritual. And we'll find out what that means
You
more.
know what I found really interesting was
Tell
is
me.
that before we heard Elder Andrew, because he's an elder, he because it was really interesting his talk, but we had just heard Conrad Vine, and I never ever thought what he said, and I thought, wow, that's interesting, because we know there's that 3.5-year period
Mhm.
where the armies go and they're gonna, right, then they retreat.
Oh, Jerusalem.
Yeah, and then of course God's people, the ones who listened, none of them died because they listened and they got out of the city. So Conrad Vine said this thing with COVID, that if you notice, like a lot of the countries, he said Britain, he listed several of them that are pulling down their mandates. So he said he kind of correlated that with saying, could it be, this is just a possibility, could it be that they pull down the mandates
Yeah, people
and
say
everything kind of goes, more normal, and then they come back?
then sudden destruction.
Exactly. And he said, so could it be that those are getting pulled down? People will go back to peace and say, you'll be all see things are, and then all of a sudden, because we're not preparing during that time.
Right.
Instead, we're, doing whatever we're doing. And so I just thought that was interesting because I'd never thought about that.
Possibly. Good point, Derek. Okay. Question number 3. Oh, did we finish 2? What was the reason given for the crowns on the horns? Well, the top of the page gives the answer. First line.
It has to do with the dark ages and the end times. It has to do with time.
And the nations in Europe obeyed whatever the beast said, what behest says.
Now, Elena, what was it?
What's behest? Behest. That word.
The command.
The command. Okay, so the nations of Europe obeyed the command. So the nations are obeying the beast. So the nations are the horns.
Again, because history repeats, in the historical Dark Ages, why did Rome have so much power over the nations?
Because they had obedient people in this place.
This was chained to the convent. The common people did not have this book.
Yeah, it was in the Latin.
So the papacy, that's why the term Dark Ages, because there's no Bible. The entrance of thy words, David says, Psalm 119, 130, giveth light. You take the Bible away, people don't know what truth is anymore. And they have to listen to the priests.
Yeah.
Who may have some light, but because they are in darkness or in error, the whole thing is dark. And so the church in the 6th and 7th and 8th centuries, it kept getting darker. And this is during the time of what church of the 7th?
Thyatira?
Thyatira, exactly. Church of the Dark Ages. And the most information of all the 7 churches is given to Thyatira. I mean, it's like 12 verses. All the other churches are, Sardis is like 4, Ephesus 6, 7, but all the other churches don't even come near to the quantity of information given to Thyatira, because it's the longest period, and they were in such darkness. Papal supremacy in the Dark Ages. That was number 2. And the nations of Europe obeyed the behest, the command of the beast, because there was no word of God. And all the nations were, I remember there was, I don't know which nation it was now. Was it France that, and this was like the 10th or 9th or 10th century. The papal legate gave this emperor a decree. You either will do what we say or anathema. And
that
this
was
king
in
was,
Germany, not in Germany.
I don't know which one it was. He crossed the Alps in the middle of winter
Mhm,
to go to ask for pardon from the Pope.
yeah.
This is the king of a country.
Mhm,
But this is the kind of power Roman.
yeah.
Okay. So is the same thing going to happen in our day?
Oh, yeah.
And we're not going to cover it tonight, but we'll get there next week. If you turn back to Revelation 17, I'll just give you a teaser. Revelation 17, and then we'll look at it in more detail tomorrow or next week. Revelation 17, verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are, oh, we could have gone right there. We're looking at Daniel. All of those are good support texts, but this is where we should have gone. I should have remembered that text, 10, 12. 10 kings are the 10 horns.
Mhm,
So we have, and I mentioned this some weeks ago, under the national law to worship, bow down that golden image that we're going to have again. The
That
world,
is- that this is toward the end of everything he said. The 10 horns will receive power from 1 hour with the beast. And after
Yeah.
that, remember that they will turn against the
Yeah.
beast.
we're going to go over that in detail next week. I'm just bringing it up now.
Mhm,
So under the final crisis, international Sunday law,
yeah,
the world will be divided into 10 precincts,
yes.
and there will be a head, a king over each one. And the Pope will be giving the command to all of them.
Mhm,
And that's where this comes in. Now, I don't want to go here now because that will take thunder away from next week, but I just wanted you to see that verse because this is from verse, well, really much of this chapter is future. Some of it has been, like 13, has been fulfilled in the past
mhm.
because of the Dark
This is
Ages.
Future.
But we get down here to verse 9 and 10. Some of it's past. 5 kings are fallen. We're going to go over this more next week. One is, the other is not yet coming. When he comes, he must continue in short space. That's future. We're not there yet. But we'll look at that more in detail next week. All right, let's get back here to number 3. In Revelation 17, no crowns are upon the heads. Why? Or because?
I answer because they don't have power yet, the 10 horn. They don't have the kingdom yet. They don't have the assignment yet. I
Yeah,
said,
isn't it, it draws a final conflict. And so it's just focusing on the woman because she's
Yeah.
got the, it's all of the powers that were given to the king. They're all united. So it's just, she's the final conflict and that's it.
mhm.
So the fact that the woman is sitting on the beast is
She's
given,
leading. She has the power.
it's given to show that there's a union of,
Church and state.
exactly. We don't see that clearly in 13.
Mhm,
So that's why this woman is riding this beast in 17.
mhm.
And like my wife said, it's to highlight the final conflict.
Mhm.
And this is, I'm reading the chapter, the paragraph above here, on Revelation 17. In that chapter, the kings are said not to have received their power. We just looked at the verse 12. To join with the beast in persecuting God's people. They don't receive their power till the end, until a certain time. We'll find out when that is next week. So yeah, number 3, no crowns are upon the heads. It's because it's to highlight the final conflict. And the 10 kings will receive power, but not till later.
For 1 hour.
For 1 hour.
So 1
Now,
hour.
now,
is
since you brought that up, Elena, what do you think that means for 1 hour?
like a month or a half a month? What is it?
An hour in Bible prophecy is how long?
2 weeks?
How do you know that?
I don't know. I know it's with the 24 hours.
Henry said so.
Henry said so.
Yeah, but I know it's,
How would you know prophetically an hour is 2 weeks?
have to divide a day, it's a year, yeah?
So
So
you
we
take,
have to divide in 24.
you take 360 divided by 24.
Yeah,
15 days. That's 2 weeks, 1 day.
yeah.
Now, we got some time and I'm tempted to go down that road, but why did you bring up an hour, Elena?
15, because they say 1 hour with the beast.
Yep.
They will have power for 1 hour.
That's the end of 12.
So you're looking at 2 weeks of power these kings
Yes.
have.
And that's not a prophetic, like, it's.
No, it's
a-
literal time
Yeah,
because the book was written prophetic.
no,
When
yeah, no.
there was
no.
still prophecy was still.
Imagine short time and then they will revolt
Now I'll
again.
just give you, because the temptation is so great, it's hard to resist.
Yeah. Yeah.
So verse 12. Now, I'm going to put it on you ladies. You tell me. When do they receive this power? Before or after probation closes?
I think it's after,
Dan?
I'm going to go with after.
Hun?
because 2 weeks is a short time.
Is it going to
Is
be
that
3-0
the-
or 2-1?
Is that the little time of peace that it's not? Okay.
Probationary time closes on the world. Is it before then or after?
That they have this 2-week period?
Yeah.
I would say before. I could be wrong, but I have my reasonings why I think.
Okay, give us your reasoning, then I'm going to go to the ladies, ask their reason.
I would think, okay, I could be wrong, but I would think it would be before, because this has to come upon the world, but yet the Lord is not allowing it to be so long, because we wouldn't even be able to handle it if you've got all of this uniting together of evil. That's
So
what.
if it's a 2-week period, when do you put the 2 weeks before probationary time closes? How
Well, yeah,
far
you
back?
put it- Huh?
Where do you put it in
Wait,
relation?
Well, you just asked if it was before or after. You didn't ask me to tell you where to put it. You just said before, after. I think it's before. I'm just saying that because the Lord in mercy is not going to let us have to withstand that, over, you know what I'm saying? And so it's in his mercy. So it's a short period of time, but I just would think it would be before, because of what's going to be upon the world. I mean, we're still going to have these issues before probation closes.
It's just that I thought it's after, because
Okay.
the Lord will give us time. They will fight between themselves, and his people are free to finish what they are doing. That's what I thought.
Deanne?
I think it has to do after, because it is such a short period of time, because it's kind of like a bloodbath.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
It
That's
doesn't
what I
say
thought.
somewhere that blood is up to the horses' bridles or something.
Where did we read that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Chapter, the end of 14.
At the end.
Chapter 14.
Yeah.
All right, let me show you something, ladies, and then
Yes.
I will tell you my position, whether
Mhm.
it's before or after.
We're back to tonight's link.
Oh,
Went over this at the end of Daniel. Here we have all three timelines, 1260, 1335, and 1290. COP is close of probation. UDD, Universal Death Decree. This is at the end of the 1260 in verse 7, Daniel 12. 1335 takes us to the voice of God, the beginning of the seventh plague. You notice these two 15-day periods here.
Why is there two of them?
Because from the close of probation, it's very possible we have 30 days until the second coming. In the midst of the 2 weeks or the 30 days,
in the
voice of
7th.
God speaks, the day and hour of Jesus coming, which would be a fourth night. Now, this is just this book, this lady I read, Marion Barry, she put this together, and I can't find any reason why it doesn't make sense. So she had the diagram too, but it wasn't as clear. This is chapter 18 of Revelation right here, Babylon Falls. The 10 horns having power with the beast, I believe, are right here. After the close of probation. This is the time of Jacob's trouble for God's people. Now, it could be longer, but to make this thing work the way it does, if the national Sunday law begins here, verse 11, 13,
No,
13, 11, 60 days later, it's becoming universal. That, if we go back and look at 12 of Daniel, it says, blessed is he that cometh to the 1335. We used to think, oh, that's second coming, blessed hope. But really, I was reading it again the other day. I read it to Mary, the page 636, Great Controversy. I think it begins in 35, 36. At the voice of God, a number of things happen.
Can that be enlarged, hun? No?
God turns the
yeah, that's better.
captivity. God turns the captivity of his people at the voice of God. That's the beginning. We're going to see that in Revelation 16, verse 17. He says, a loud voice out of the throne. It is done. That's when he speaks. And then she gives the detail in Great Controversy, 6:35, 36, 37. It all happens. The saints are delivered here. At midnight, God manifests the deliverance of his people. So the 6 plagues happen for 2 weeks, then the 7th begins, and there's a great earthquake right here, or right after this. I mean, that's going to be a 2-week earthquake. That's really going to be something. God's people are delivered, and you should go through and read that tonight. It's really beautiful, beginning verse 635, or page 635, Great Controversy. It's the chapter God's people delivered. Tremendous.
635.
The wicked are about to slay the saints, I had the order mixed up. I had to go back and read it. What happens is the saints are in prayer, bowing down. They don't even notice what's happening. But the wicked, all of a sudden, there's this blackness that ascends all over the earth. And it's just like at the cross. And then there's the clouds open up, and there's a space of indescribable glory, and the saints are told to look up, and they look up and they see, like Stephen did, the Son of God sitting on the right hand of power in heaven.
Amen.
And they know this is a sign of their deliverance. And it's right after that the voice of God speaks. It is finished. Special resurrection, Daniel 12:2. Saints come out who have died in the faith of the third angel's message. That would be every Seventh-day Adventist saved, keeping the Sabbath. They come forth here to see the second coming. Now, we don't know for sure if it's 2 weeks. This is based on what Marion Barry put together, but it makes sense if it going to happen that way. She said, you know, when we get to this point over here, when it begins, NSL begins, and if we have 60 days and now we get the USL, Universal, it's worldwide now. If it happens in 60 days, all of this is probably going to happen that way. But maybe not. We got to give time because God has his time, but it's not going to be long because these time prophecies, literal, have to work together. They are all ending after the close of probation. Daniel 12:1 is right here. I could have put a line right going down. Daniel 12:1 right here. They all finish after the close of probation. So the whole chapter, Daniel 12, is contemporary with the close of probation.
Okay.
I wasn't planning on doing this, but
What a blessing though that God, or that it is a special blessing, like what you were saying, like Mrs. White says, those who have died in the faith, that they are able to be resurrected to see Jesus come. What a blessing just to know, even if you are put to sleep, that because of your faith of what you know, when you died, that you're going to have that privilege to come forward and see Jesus come.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the saints this is our deliverance. Now we don't get immortality till here. But if you read the passage there in Great Controversy, she says they come forth from the tomb glorified. And the living saints at this point are also glorified.
Yeah.
Their faces are aglow with heaven.
So can you imagine them walking around for a couple of, or what, a week or, you
2
know,
weeks.
whatever, or
2 weeks. If it's that long.
glorified like that? So I've always thought that for some of us who will have to endure to the end, that when maybe we're in our last, like we just, you know, we're pleading before the Lord, you know, we're pleading before the Lord, that there's nothing standing between us and him. You know, we're in this mode, you know, of constant, like Jesus was, to have a loved one come to you during that time and say, just hold on, your deliverance is coming. I mean, can you imagine that? What that would give you the strength for that, however long, 2 weeks, week, or whatever, you know what I mean? Because God's people are going to be put through the wine press.
Right here. This is the wine press right here, these 2 weeks. Once the deliverance occurs, the wicked are on the run. They are terrorized now because they know this is the end. Babylon falls. The text in 17:12 where they have the 10 kings have power 1 hour with the beast is right here. Now we don't know, even from the spirit of prophecy, when the universal death decree goes into effect. But she seems to indicate it will happen after probation closes. So they're probably talking about it right before probation closes, and they'll say, you know what, in 15 days or 2 weeks, it's going to become law, and you can kill them on sight at the end of the 2 weeks. Or it could be 30 days, 2 weeks before the close of probation. 30 days. We're going to give these people to repent. We don't know. But you know what? We know that the close of probation is imminent when they start talking about a universal death decree.
Won't that be like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't that the time where it's going to be like it was when Herod had all the babies killed when Jesus, approximately 2 years old, and they killed every baby.
We heard in a sermon Sabbath, God's people, if they're martyred, all the martyrs have to take place before this event or this day, because the saints, everybody's made up a mind when Jesus stands up. So martyrdom will be before close of probation. After close of probation, there's only 144,000 alive, maybe a few with them, who will stand with them during the time of trouble. And they're in the woods, they're in prisons and jails, dungeons for this 2 week period, waiting their death sentence. But they know God will deliver them. See, to have this knowledge, behold, even if the time frame is a little off, we know all these events have to happen. So we're going to be looking for this once about the time probation closes. Now, Ellen White says nobody knows when probation closes, not even Satan himself. But he will surmise after the fact that the saints are in these retreat places in the mountains, and there's praying and angels, double guard of angels around them. He will think their sins are forgiven, and it's close of probation. So, I mean, what a blessing to have, even if the time frame's a little off, just to know these are the way the events are going to happen. And I'm telling you, when we get here, I'm looking 60 days. It could be longer, but if it happened, I mean, look at how quickly this thing has happened. And since the beginning of the year, you got this trucker convoy in Canada, and not even 2 weeks later, they're already under siege.
I just got a post on my phone that says they're going to sell the vehicles to make the money up from all the arrests and how much money it took to do all that.
This is going to be a meltdown in Canada if this happens.
Yeah.
Now we have our convoy, and we're going to need to put that on our prayer list beginning Wednesday here. And they're going to Washington over the next several days. I don't think it's going to get that bad because we have too many freedom lovers. Not that the Canada doesn't, but I would be really surprised if Biden's administration comes down on these truckers like that. Because Trudeau has gone off the rails in Canada. But we'll have to wait and see. We need to keep all of this in prayer because people, our nation was founded, give me liberty or give me death. This is what's happening in Canada. What are you going to arrest all these thousands of truckers?
But they are confiscating their bank accounts and everything.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah.
There's going to have to be a turnaround, or Canada is going to melt down before our eyes. Because the world is not tolerating this. Look at Australia. We heard 1.2 million people last week in one of it's not a province, but they got Queensland, and then they got, was one of these territories, states, whatever they call them in Australia. 1.2 million people came out. People are fed up with this tyranny. But anyway, let's get back. I want to just go over this so that you see what we're looking at here.
What a blessing that we have the spirit of prophecy.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think about it seriously. I think about this lie that the devil has been putting out for so long about the rapture, because talking to my brother, just like, I don't know, since the last several weeks or whatever months that we've been now talking, he believes in the rapture. And he said to me, I thought it would have happened by now. So I said to him, so I let him talk, and he goes, but it'll come, and I go, so can I ask you a question? So what happens if the rapture doesn't come? What are you going to do? He goes, I'm going to be in big trouble. That's what he told me. And I told him, I said, you are. You're going to be in big trouble because they're depending so much on it, and yet just in the period I've been talking to him, I've been seeing a change in him. But I'm just saying they're so dependent on it that it's like, I'm serious. I'm thinking for my sister and my brother, I'm thinking they're going to be devastated.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're going to be standing there like, we're not supposed to be here during this time. You know what I'm saying? I think it's already kind of scaring them because they thought that they would actually have been taken already. Yeah.
My sister believes that also.
I really feel sorry for them because it's going to be a rude awakening.
Very, very rude. Excuse me. Let's finish this up. Page 3. The top 2 specific times of persecution are brought to view during the long life of the dragon of chapter 12. 1260 years, verse 6. in the final conflict with the remnant church, 14, 15, and 16 verses. It is interesting to note that in between verse 15 and 17, we find the earth helping the woman. By opening her mouth to swallow up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Verse 16, in between these verses, we see the rise of, guess who? America.
Mhm.
And the spread of Protestant principles of religious and civil liberty. Until the, and you know, do you notice, ladies, what's under attack right now? Civil liberties.
Mhm.
The religious attack's coming. That's going to be the Sunday Christ. But right now it's civil, primarily. Until the period of the final conflict when these principles are first restricted and at last removed entirely or day. It is in this space of time when America rises to power that there is comparative calm before the scene changes and she is afflicted again by the dragon through the governments of earth. We have entered that period of time. There's no turning back. Like my wife said, we may have a period of peace or a relative few months, we don't know, maybe a year. But because the Bible says when they shall say peace and safety, well, we're nowhere near peace and safety right now. So there has to be a change in the government, or at least in this nation, to once again bring calm and tranquility, which is, to me, one of the strongest arguments. We got to see a change in this regime.
Okay, so the interesting thing is so we've had this situation, as you were saying, you know, like with the truckers, what's going on in the world. But then I say still in the world, but you know how it always goes to the world first, natural, then it comes to the church. So it's happening within our church. But what's interesting, I thought, is that so this issue with the truckers that, you know, this big protest about, like they're saying, you know, here in California, it's not like that lady said who's helping to organize it. She says, it's not the mandates. It's not just the mandates. It's our freedom. And that people have to have accountability because we've lost jobs, we've lost homes, and they're going to have accountability. So anyway, this is, okay, so this is what she's saying. But then just today we heard that now there's a rise up within the religious realm because of this pastor that's being held in that Canadian jail, that prison that they got him. And he's been fasting, his son said, for 14 days already. He's fasting in there. So he's in there, right? And so what did we just hear, hun, today? She said, now everybody is going to start to protest religiously, because she said, if you don't think that that can happen to you, it can. Absolutely. She says, they're already attacking us in the church. So now we're going to band together, go to your consulates, go to your churches of worship, and begin to protest. So see, now they're going to, and there's a date, I forgot the day she said, but they're going to see. So I'm saying, even within just like the world, you've got the truckers, and then within the world, now you've got these evangelicals, or, you know, all church, whoever wants to be involved. It's not just evangelical, whoever, to fight against the religious persecution is what she said.
And I believe there was someone said there's other pastors in prison in jail in Canada.
Yes. Yeah.
He's just the one prominent that has been on the scene.
So she said, we're going to fight now for him.
Yeah.
That this is not going to, she said, this is nonsense. We're not tolerating this. He didn't do anything. And now we're going to fight and rise up against this.
And the reason they again arrested, he went down to support the truckers and even to have the wine and communion with some of them and who were believers, you know. And so Canadian government said, no,
you're encouraging them.
Thing on your head to take you in. And he's been outspoken because he comes from Poland under communism. And this is what's happened in Canada over the last several months. And this is why he's been protesting.
His son said what, he's in solitary confinement 23 hours a day. He only can come out 1 hour. And of course, he's been fasting for 14 days.
Call family and his attorney. And his 1 hour a day.
How are you finding this out, Mary? Is that the last link you sent me about the convoys? I mean,
You cannot go on any news at all now.
Forget regular
Forget
news.
the news.
Fox
You
News,
can't trust any of the news.
Newsmax, you're not going to hear
Yeah,
this on
no.
any of them.
So the ones that we go on now, and it's not because we're trying to push politics at all, but the reason that we go on these two news sites that we do is because he talks about, he has people in
On location,
positioned in places,
in real time.
France, the border. I didn't know half the stuff that was going on in the border, that now cannibalism is going on the border with the
South of the border.
with the drug cartel. That's what they're doing now.
yeah, I heard that.
Wouldn't know that, but and while one of the reporters was actually on site, they attacked him. While he was on site, there was 6 MS guys that came upon him. Thank God they didn't hurt him. My point, so we go to, what we've been watching is you can either go to you can get the app for Rumble.
Rumble.
You can do it on your computer too, Rumble.
Yeah, we've got
And then
it.
when you go on Rumble, we do watch The War Room
Bannon's
with
War
Steve
Room.
Bannon. We do, because even though he has his issues, he talks about the spiritual warfare that's going on right now. He says, this is more than anything. You better be praying with your kids, and you better be studying in the King James Version Bible of what's going on, because this is a war. He says, this is a spiritual war more than anything. This is evil that's going on right now. This is good against bad. So we watch him, The War Room, Bannon.
Okay.
And then from him, he does have people on there who have their own sites
Yeah.
that they tell you, but
Yeah.
the people that he has are just, they're top report, what they're looking at going. And then we go on, the other one is,
Frank speech.
yeah, we go on, yeah, and that doesn't have an app, but you just plug it into your computer or your phone, Frank speech.
Yeah, that's-
With Mike Lindell.
Yeah.
And the good thing with him is, he is now, that Brandon House that he has on there, and Stu Peters is on there too. He's good, but they have basically like everything that's going on also. So those are the two. Then
Okay.
the third thing that I advise is you can go on and get the app for Getter, Gettr. And they've totally taken over compared to
Twitter.
Twitter's, forget it. Twitter's out. Getter is the one that you can go there and you won't get censored. It's a conservative, like a Twitter, but
platform.
it's called Getter. And Gettr. And that, when you go on there, you can get like Steve Bannon, you can get Posobiec. There's several guys on there, that guy that's up on the border all the time.
Bannon.
And they even he just put out I always forget his name, Ben Burke, what is it? Ben
Bookworm.
Burkom. And he is the one who's one of the reporters at the border. And they just put a thing out called Law and Border. And it's a
Documentary.
we're talking live footage of what's going on. But if you go on Getter, you can get like all this stuff that's going on in Canada.
You have people on the
horrible.
ground, because
Horrible.
what they do is they take pictures, live streaming, and they upload it. So you see it as it's happening.
Immediately live.
As-
So that they showed the girl today, we felt so bad for her. I didn't know she was a news reporter, and she was just crying. Well, they didn't know what happened to her, because one of these men who are like, they said they're like SWAT in Canada. They're mean. And what they do is they'll inch forward all together very
A foot at a
slowly. You don't
time.
even see it, but they move together. And if you just touch them, that's their way that they can push you back with their batons or hit you. So this one reporter was at the front. She looked like a young girl, and she started crying, but they didn't know what was wrong. They thought they hit her in the head or they didn't know where they hit her. No, they shot a
Tear gas
tear
canister.
gas at her leg
Oh,
at a
wow.
close range. And she was just, you should have seen, she was just crying. She's like, they were trying to help her. So they show everything, like when the horses came in and trampled on the people and all of that. this lady who was like in a motorized cart, and the horses came in. They brought horses in,
This was
and the
on
horses
Friday.
kind of got startled, poor horses, and they walked right on top of these people. So they show all of it real time. You're seeing it while it's happening. So that's what we watch to find out what's going on in
If
the
you're not
world.
going to get this on the,
You can't.
you know,
Yeah.
on the regular news
Nope.
outlets. They don't
Yeah.
want people to see any of this. So we're in an information war right now. All right, let's see if we can wrap up in 10 minutes. So the last couple of questions, it says it is to enlarge upon these persecutions of the dark ages. Revelation 13:1-9 was given with the crowns upon the horns, signifying the nations assisting the papacy in her persecution during the 1260 years. And 2, in the final conflict over the Sabbath, that Revelation 17 was specifically given. And then we just looked at the chart, Daniel 12:7-13. So then, time to put your thinking caps on. Question 1, if the period of comparative calm mentioned in the above paragraph brought to view in Revelation 12:16 refers to the rise of the U.S., what verse in chapter 13 refers to America, which spreads democratic principles among the governments of the earth, affording temporary peace to the church? Does anybody have an answer?
Go, Mary.
Yeah. 11, I put 11-12
Why did you say that?
because of what it says. Then I saw a beast coming, which is America, coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon. And then it says, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in the presence and causes.
So
Yeah, that.
verse 11 covers our entire history as a nation.
Mhm.
220 or 40 years, whatever it is, because it says lamb-like, and then he speaks like a dragon. Well, the speaking like a dragon has been going on for some years now, but it's gone to the next level under COVID. And so as a result of this, and the powers that be running this government now can't stop them. They're out of control. We are speaking like a dragon, no doubt.
Yeah.
The prophecy has been partially fulfilled, but verse 13 and on, especially when we get to the point where we got to make an image to the beast, we go now into the religious realm. We're not there yet. We're moving that way quickly. Just like Mary was talking about this lady, this pastor up in Canada. That's religious, partly religious. You're arresting pastors because he was speaking out politically.
Yeah.
See, we've been warned, don't get involved in politics for this reason. Listen, we don't need to bring a time of trouble on us sooner. It's going to come at the Sabbath crisis. So let's, we're in support of the freedom movement, but we don't want to get implicated with a political movement because our message involves all people. It's not going to be long before the Sunday Sabbath crisis hits, and now we're going to be in the spotlight.
Yeah, but this guy came from Poland, you said. So he's already been through all this
And-
before. He knows about it.
And
So
I think
Why he's
exactly.
taking sides and speaking up, because he knows exactly.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be sympathetic. Absolutely. But we have to be careful because the only reason he's in prison is because he's speaking up politically against the communist regime in Canada. He's been in and out of jail for a year.
Wow.
And we at Seventh Adventist don't need to bring trouble on ourselves soon. Ellen White counsels us.
But okay, but like even Pastor Vine said, right? He said, you know what? It's time to basically quit straddling the fence. So you either go one side or you go the other side, because there's too many Adventists who are straddling the fence.
Exactly. Well, and they're too fearful.
So I think what you're trying to say, or because I can kind of, because I know it, because we've talked about it, I think what you're trying to say is that we need to stick up because, as we talked about, Ellen White was involved in the temperance ministry
That's
with
true,
the
too.
women, the temperance movement. And that was a movement, but she did it because they were speaking up against smoking and different things like that in that temperance movement. It was a good movement. They felt that they could be part of. But I think what you're trying to say is that when we get involved in sticking up or speaking up, it should be spiritually and not into the politics of
Right.
what is going on in the governments.
That's what I'm
Because
trying to
once
say.
we begin to endorse or we begin to do that, we lose the power that God has given us,
Exactly.
because now we're putting all our energy into getting a person elected or whatever. And that's not what we're here to fight against tyranny. We're here to fight against persecution. It's just like with the Uyghurs in China.
Right.
And that's why they made such a big thing about don't watch the Olympics. Because why? Because look at what's happening to those people.
Yeah.
And we're just supporting financially by watching. We're supporting what they're doing or condoning what they're doing to these poor people.
Right.
And look at what they did to a lot of the poor athletes from there.
Yeah.
So, of our athletes that went in there, how they treated them anyway, see? So they should have boycotted it. So I'm just saying, I think that's what you mean is don't get involved into the human rights. Look at what A.T. Jones did. I mean, he went to
Sure.
the courts for the Sabbath. So we have to speak out. And like Vine said, we're going to know who our friends are now. Because many people who were his friends are not his friends anymore.
Yeah.
And they told him he shouldn't have done what he did. And he said he would have done it. He'll do it again if he had to. So my point is that we're going to learn who our friends are. We're going to learn who we can trust. And really, I'm being serious, because there's infiltrators in our church and amongst our people. And if it comes to them saying, you know what, you tell me, is Deanne doing this, or is Mary doing this, or Elena? And if you tell us, we're not going to take anything against you, right? Those people who are not strong are going to say, oh yeah, I'll tell you, because they don't want the issues. So we're going to learn who our real friends are through this whole thing. We're learning already.
And that's why pestilence 19 was the dry run. And look how the church dealt with pestilence 19. So as we go into the final crisis in the near future, if we haven't learned from pestilence 19, we will fail the final test. This is serious. There's no more, pansy-whamsy time. This is time to be serious. People we've known from Carol's lessons 2 years ago, sealing is going on. Sealing's not future. It's in process now. The final seal will occur one day, but she says by the decisions we're making on a day-to-day basis, we are determining where we're going to spend eternity, with Jesus or the lake of fire. Of course, the lake of fire is not eternal, but you know what I mean. All right, last question. So question 1 is verse 11. And you could probably say 11 to 12 in there. All right, last question. Have you noticed how much of the last half of Revelation 13 refers to his persecuting power when it begins to speak like a dragon? In contrast to the little amount of space referring to the rise of this power? I don't think I've ever seen that until I put this lesson together. I thought, this is incredible. One verse covers our entire history as a nation. But from the end of that one verse to the end of the chapter, we might have 5 or 10 years. Because, we've been seeing even under the Bush administration, this church, this nation began to speak like a dragon. Patriot Act after 9/11. Look what they did to Ruby Ridge in the 90s. Oklahoma City bombing. What's happening in Canada, we were just getting a little sprinkling of. What's his name? Down in Waco.
Koresh.
That was a little sprinkling of what we see in Canada, nationwide, or at least in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So the rest of the chapter is dealing with a very small period of time, few years, but the crux of it is probably the last 5 years, from now till the end of time, if we even have 5 years. We don't know. Look how much space is given for just the last few years of time in this nation alone. And then it goes, of course, I think much of chapter 13, the last, from verse 12 on, is international, under the international law. It's not national. That chart said, if that's correct, we go quickly, 60 days, we're into international. The nations of the world will follow quickly. And we just, Mary and I have heard on the war room just the last few days. What happens in America spreads around the world.
Yeah.
That's the principle. And it goes quickly. If the lights go out here, they go out everywhere. That's why Ellen White says it starts here and spreads to every nation of the world. I mean, to me, this is the most exciting time to be alive. You know? Okay. In conclusion. Oh, did we finish the question? In contrast to the Lamont, okay, what does that tell you regarding its importance? Well, I just gave the answer. I got so excited. That those living in this last generation need to be on guard now. You know, we need to thank the Lord for pestilence 19, because in the first year, 2020, it was a pause, or 2020. It was a pause. Things shut down, get back to your Bible, start studying. We've gone 2 years and now we're coming out of this fog and tyranny is spreading around the globe. That may change for a little period of time. We'll find out. But eventually we know where this is going. Get ready, get ready, get ready. In conclusion, thus we see the beasts of chapter 12, 13, and 17 are the same, but refer to different aspects and times when the dragon has worked through the governments to persecute and suppress God's people. Further, Revelation 13 and 17 are but enlargements of the two periods of persecution brought to view in Revelation 12. The former, the persecution of the dark ages, and the latter, in the final conflict over the Sabbath. So was this a helpful going over it like this, ladies?
Yes.
We all learned something. Amen. So next week, let me take 1 minute and just bring this up, and then we will close this thing out. So if you want, by the way, if you want this thing, I've got it up at the website. It's right here under Daniel, lesson 27, relationship between 1260, 1335 time. It's at the bottom of the second page of Daniel. All right, let me bring up. All right, this is what I'm going to send out tonight, and you ladies can work on. I'm just going to spend 1 minute going over it. Part A, it's dealing with mystery of godliness, mystery of iniquity. That's part B. Jehovah keeps his covenant. That's just first page. Just reading. We have these two verses. It will be very interesting what you find out about these two verses. Mystery of godliness versus mystery of iniquity. You can read through this, be interested, just good information. Then we come here, and here we have the comparison between the God of Israel and Satan and Babylon. And I didn't come up with this. I took it out of his book.
Oh, wow.
And it's contrast, like the keys of death and of Hades, keys of bottomless pit. And you see a contrast in all of these going back and forth. Seal of God in the forehead, mark in the hand and forehead. And so when you're all done with that, it's going to take you about an hour to go through it, but it's really worth looking at. And then, so it's 5 pages when you finish there. And I'm going to send that out tonight.
I think it'll take a little bit longer to go through it than an hour, but just saying.
Well,
You could go through it maybe in an hour.
it took several hours to put it together. So you can do it in an hour or a little longer, that's fine. And then on Thursday, so you want to take time Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, and Thursday morning, because on Thursday, I'm going to send you This is just what I showed you is just an addendum. But Thursday, I'm going to give the next lesson 46. I'm going to work on that, and that's dealing with the 10 kings, and we'll go over some of that next week. All right, let's wrap up. It was a good study tonight, and thank the Lord for giving us strength to carry on.